Welcome to my void. Today's a special episode because I'm with a really special guest, and we're talking about a topic that I have been fascinated in since I hopped out the womb. Actually, before I hopped out the womb, I was in the womb contemplating this shit. Like, I was in the womb just reading Sartre and Albert Camus through the umbilical cord, trying to understand what happiness is. So I brought on, this is going to sound really strange, we are going to have a conversation about happiness, meaning, fulfillment, and purpose, and just like what it is that makes a good life. Like, what is a good life? And I brought on a really lovely human who I'll let introduce himself because he is, I think, the happiest person that I know.
Oh my God. I feel like that's a gross misrepresentation, but fair enough.
Is it really? Okay, you'll explain it better than me. But yes, I'm with Roman. Roman, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, living humans. I am a living human as well, based out of Brisbane, Australia, called Roman Albert, and I go by Roman is Alive on my kind of musical journey. But I think we met really just through one instance where you had shared something around, I think it was the notion of suicide or depression, and I DM'd you just like a random video about my thoughts, never expecting you to even see it. But I was like, you know what? Just in case, I'm going to send some vibes through. And we ended up having a really cool conversation from that. And here we are today having another conversation, which is cool.
Do you want to give people some context about your life? I think it's important for people to know you're a musician.
Sure.
Just like, how do you fill your days up?
Okay, so I am a freestyle MC, is I guess what a lot of people know me as. In relative to Brisbane, I'm not like super blown up or anything. And then I just think about life. I kind of, outside of my like capitalist definitions of what I do to earn an income, I really just kind of live. I love having conversations with people. I think conversation is the thing that like takes you everywhere a passport can't. And
I agree.
Yeah. And that's why it's awesome to be having a chat today. I'm so new to the podcast context that I'm probably just going to sound like we're just chatting and I'll forget that this is actually a podcast. So I'm definitely going to speak way too casually, like we're just having a normal conversation.
No,
and some,
this is actually just a normal conversation.
Yeah, I feel like some nihilistic joke will get me cancelled before I even have a career. So that's kind of fun.
Oh my God, not at all. This is the anti-cancel community. It is.
So good.
You'd have to do a lot to get cancelled here.
We'll see. I'll roll the dice.
But yeah, I really want to get into sort of the first, or rather the second conversation that we had. And I guess it sparked because on that particular day, I was just feeling really suicidal and I was just in my bag. And you were telling me, I guess we just started talking about like, why be alive? Like, why? And you said something really interesting, which is that even on your lowest day, you still felt that life was amazing. Can you explain why you enjoy being alive? Like, why do you think life is amazing?
Sure. And I think I got to make the immediate clarification as well that being amazing to be alive doesn't equate to enjoying being alive necessarily.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you mean by that when you say that life is amazing?
Sure. For me, I don't know exactly when it started to kind of enter my meditation or thoughts on life. But around 2016, a few years ago, I started to just basically have these reflections and looking at the stars and going about the world and just, taking in each day. I was like, I have this sneaking suspicion, and there's a lot of backstory that led to this kind of season as well. But I was just saying, like, I have this sneaking suspicion that no matter what, like, I know I have my set of privileges and hurdles and barriers, but even within my privileged position, I suspect for anyone, it's amazing to be alive. Like, just to experience anything at all.
Really?
Yeah, like...
Is it amazing statistically? Is it like, wow, the statistics, the probability of you being here are so slim that the fact that you're here gives life meaning? Or like, I guess what I'm asking you is, what is... When you say that life is amazing, do you mean that it is because you said it's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
So is it meaningful?
I don't even know if it's meaningful. I think the fact that it is maybe not meaningful inherently is a part of what makes it amazing. It's this, like, for me, I think, you know, so I come from a background where I grew up atheist, and then there was a part of my life where we became religious, our family. I kind of became Christian, and sorry if you are Christian out there, what I'm about to say will 100% offend you, but you are incorrect. No. I was just going to say, like, I think any notion of meaning, meaningful framework, whether it's a religious framework or, you know, some new age sense of I'm living my purpose out on this planet and what I've been called to do or anything like that, I think, it's just a suspicion, this is just me, you can cancel me if you want, but I think it's more romantic that there might not be some inherent meaning to this whole experience that we all have in common. And I think there's, you know, more beauty in the idea of us in the middle of this celestial kind of orchestra of events, just simply dancing in a biosphere of incredible complexity. And our species, it seems, has this unique sentience of our existence. I think that just being without any inherent meaning kind of adds to the amazingness versus if there was some reason why it was happening, it would be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that's why it had to happen. Okay, I get it. You know?
Oh, so you're saying is it the absurdism, like the inherent absurdism, the inherent meaninglessness of existence just makes it meaningful?
Well, not even meaningful, but cool. I think I'm going to like avoid the word meaning because it's like it makes it novel. It's like special because, I mean, apart from the fact that meaning is more present, it seems, the more you zoom in. So the more you zoom out, we're just this insignificant biosphere in the middle of infinite void. And, you know, everyone will die and universal heat death, done. It doesn't really matter. So that's a reality. Yeah. But what is also a reality is someone having their first kiss or someone courageously saying that they're gay to their family or someone having an honest moment or redeeming themselves or forgiving themselves or whatever the fuck it might be. The more you zoom in, there's these moments that are in themselves these infinitely resonant stories or story moments. And I just think that is a really cool dance of meaning and meaninglessness.
Oh, wow.
And there's music there.
Interesting.
In my perspective.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to sound like a really dark question.
Yes.
And obviously I don't want you to.
I love it.
But like, have you considered, what are your thoughts on suicide? Like,
Sure.
Do you prefer to be alive or would you prefer to not be alive?
I love that you're asking this as a setup for something that I think you already know as my opinion because we've had this chat. It's great. It's very professional. I love it. But my thinking is, so what got me through, when I was a Christian, I was super fanatic. And then long story short, became rational. And I had a realization that I didn't know what I believed. And that kind of led to the web of my identity unraveling and unspooling. And in that identity crisis chapter, I was super suicidal. I remember I was like stacking chairs at the church that I still worked at, ready to do the youth service, going, well, I can't kill myself here because that would traumatize about 200 kids. So maybe I need to go on a holiday, make it look like an accident, think about my family. Like I was really, you know, thinking it through. And from that dark place where I kind of refused to live in meaningless existence or what felt like a meaningless existence at the time, I kind of basically just crunched the simple logic that I want to die. But the reality is I am dying and I will die. And once I die, I won't exist for an inconceivable amount of time. And right now is the only time I do exist. So I may as well, like what is certain is death and then not existing. What isn't certain is what happens while I'm alive. So I may as well stay alive just to see what happens as a fun way of dying.
I see. Okay, so is what keeps you alive curiosity? I
think what keeps me alive is curiosity. And to be honest as well, I kind of like this notion of just trolling the darkness. I kind of like the idea of trolling trolling the void, trolling the inherent selfishness of our species. Sometimes it feels like. So I'm kind of a lot of Christians in the church scene, you know, they talk about being dead to the world and you're living for God. And now I don't really have a specific God to believe in. So I just like the idea of being dead to my selfish desire and really just living to just give people an experience, whether it's musical or a conversation or encouragement or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you're okay and you're dying, so it's fine. Like, it's good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so you went from being Christian to not being Christian. What was your relationship to existence when you were Christian? And how did that change?
That's a cool question. I think, and actually from us having the other conversation that we had before this podcast was a thing that made me reflect in a way I haven't on how my time in Christianity kind of did awaken me a little bit to the kind of universal scale of things. So there's this whole idea, anyone who's Christian or even Old Testament religion related, you know about Moses and the burning bush. And he asks, you know, who's speaking when God talks to Moses. And God says, I am, you know, I am that I am. So it's this idea that God can only say, I am, ... because anything that comes after that would put a limitation on what God is. So,
I never knew that.
Yeah, it's cool, right? Like God is both bigger than you can imagine and smaller than you can imagine. Or in this case of a rational, you know, understanding, life and the mystery of life is both bigger than you can imagine and smaller than you can imagine. So I think that initial Christian lens made me think about the fabric of everything, like I am, as in God is both heaven, earth, and hell. Every single thing that exists is like a skin cell within the organic thing that is God. So,
I see.
Yeah, I think that translated to me now seeing basically just a general understanding of the universe. It's like the universe is a word, just like time and love and, you know, anything. When you say it, it lets you capture a ridiculously big idea as well as a ridiculously small idea. And it packages it into this little word that you can say and you're like, done, universe, done. I can now move on from that word. But it's like, wait, what, fam? Like, did we just say everything that has ever been, ever will be, is far reaching and like inner reaching more than we can even comprehend? So I don't know. I think that shaped my reality when I was a Christian. And I used to, it's so cringe, but I used to preach off the idea of everything that implies. But I used to preach off that still thinking that it was real. And now, without going into full, you know, atheistic arguments or anything, when you consider the Christian narrative, if God is God and forever is forever, it's just like basic math that anything times infinity equals zero. So heaven and hell, like whether you're at a great party for infinity or whether you're being tortured for infinity, it still equals zero.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like imagine a great party that you could never leave. That would just suck.
Yeah. No, I agree with that too. I always ask Christians, like, if you're working so hard to get into heaven and heaven is forever, aren't you just working to get into prison? Yeah. And like, that's a question that upsets people, but like I want to know. For
sure. And even with hell, and I'll move on past the Christian stuff, but just to like put the final point on it, even suffering and pain is only suffering and pain because we know it's temporary. Like you can detect pain because it has a start and a stop point. And that's why when they're, you know.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. If there's torture, they have to give a break between instances of pain because otherwise you stop registering it as pain. So even hell, which would be eternal suffering.
I might disagree.
Oh, you reckon? Oh, let's go. I love it.
So no, I think eternal happiness is painful. And eternal pain is also painful. So I think because I think pain is still pain even in its absolute terms, but happiness is only happiness in contrast to pain. Oof. So happiness is defined by pain, but pain just is. Like pain needs no qualifiers, it needs no contrast. It just is.
And I think we have found our first intersection of disagreement. This is our first point.
Really?
Note the time.
I know.
It's great.
Why do you feel that pain, why do you feel that suffering can only exist in the absence, or no, why do you think that suffering can only exist in the presence of pleasure? Like, if I'm punching you in the face forever, does it not feel painful?
Well, okay, so in that instance, just to get really nitty gritty, if you were punching me forever, because you would punch and then pull your hand back and then punch, there would be a moment of relief, which then let me register the pain again. But
okay, so if I put a needle in you, because I think the difference between pain and pleasure is that pain intensifies over time, whereas pleasure actually just gets lower and lower. It decreases over time, which is why I think that eternal pleasure is pain, whereas eternal pain is still pain. And maybe this is how because I also feel like reality is hell, like being a human being is hell because of all these constructs, like because of the fact that pain is pain and pleasure is only pleasure in relation to, like, it's because of all these things. But I'm interested to hear your rationale for why infinite suffering is not suffering.
I love that the question feels so heavy, but it's still beautiful. Like, it's so true. And I think the easiest way I can kind of surmise it without rambling forever is I heard this quote once, which was pretty cool. And I think ultimately you and me actually, like, we see life fairly similarly in terms of the complexity and the depth of the suffering, for example. Like, we are gauging the depth and spread of the experience that it is. But I think it's that glass half full, glass half empty thing almost. So where some people might think I'm saying, oh, the glass is half full. Like, yes, there's suffering, but it's amazing to be alive. Really, it's the glass is half empty. So being alive is so much suffering and just so many disappointments and heartbreaks and restrictions and all sorts of things. Just the knowledge of death is terrifying when you truly behold it. But it is also, in the midst of that, to look at someone and have a laugh together is this sweet little moment that just because it exists is a almost miracle level. What the fuck? Like, we can still feel good amidst this insanity. So I find that because of, it's like the stars to space ratio. There's more blackness than there are stars, but because there's so much blackness and it used to be just blackness, it's almost more amazing that there are stars at all and that there's some light in the sky. So it's like,
interesting.
Yeah, the glass is half empty. The glass is half full, but it is still one hell of a glass.
Wow. I think this is like what I find interesting about you is that usually I have a friend who also believes that life is amazing. And he's a pretty positive person. And when I ask him why life is amazing, he's just like, and the last time this conversation came up with him, he was heartbroken. He just got out of a relationship. And he was like, yeah, I'm just having a really shitty day, but isn't life amazing? And I was like, why do you do that? Like, why do you refuse to acknowledge suffering? Like, why is it every day life is amazing? And he was just like, no, like, there's always like a silver lining and, which I just don't agree. Like, but I think what's interesting about you is that even without the silver lining, you are able to acknowledge that, like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that is the case because I don't see it as a silver lining, but just the fact that there's a cloud in the sky. I'm like, holy shit, what is that? How did it get there? This is insane. What is going on? Like, there's a beauty. I think I have a bias. So my background is in film and I like studied film and storytelling and script writing. And I think everyone generally has a intrinsic love for story, and that's why people read books and make movies and go to the movies. We told them around campfires, and now the cinema is like a digital campfire. But
Yeah.
I think I have this like fascination that there just is a story. And there might be more villains than there are good guys. There might be more, you know, like hecticness than there is beautiful moments, but they are both in the book. And the fact that there's ink on the page to me is like, what the fuck is going on? This is wild, fam. Let's go. Like, there's just something about it.
That's incredible.
And I know I think I sound super privileged, maybe, that it's like, well, it's easy for you to say because you're living in
Not really.
I don't know, like, I don't want to go through the whole grief story again, but basically that realization of it being amazing, I had a suspicion of it. And having been an ex-Christian, I was very weary of having any sort of belief perched atop, you know, bias and privilege and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
But the day my mum passed away suddenly, who was my best friend at the time, and I can't even tell enough backstory to build the context of how amazing this human being was. And when she suddenly passed away, and I found that out in that moment where I had to like process that news for both myself, my younger sister, our family, I realized that was the worst I'd ever felt. It was like a tidal wave of suffering. I could feel the lightning of trauma running through my neurology. But in that moment, I looked up at the stars and I had this like confirmation epiphany of like, holy shit, it is still, like this is again, just for me, it is still amazing to be alive right now as I feel indescribable pain. And for me, it just solidified it. And I realized it wasn't perched atop the privilege of just having a good life and a good family. It was like, oh no, things can come crashing down. And that's still a story. And to experience any story before the great silence is something cool.
That is incredible. No, I'm actually shaking. Okay, so I have this theory.
Go. I feel like I'm talking heaps as well. So let's...
No, not at all. Like, you're doing amazing.
Thanks, coach. What's your theory?
Yeah, so I have this theory. I know you don't want to talk about meaning, but I want to talk about meaning just a little bit.
No, go for it.
I have this theory that actually the only thing that does give life meaning is death. And I thought about that when you were first telling me the story about your mom passing away and you having that realization in that moment of grief. That like, wow. Okay, so my theory about like the intersection of death and meaning is that if something doesn't end, then it cannot be valuable. Like there's no reason for me to get out of bed tomorrow if I'm gonna be here forever. It doesn't, like if I fall in love and I meet my soulmate, if such a thing actually exists, or like, you know, if I fall in love and I decide to spend the rest of my life with this person, that is only meaningful because one day I will die. So like it is finitude that gives life meaning.
100.
But do you think that, what was that?
100%. I agree, yeah.
Yeah, do you think that without your mother passing, like if death was never introduced into your life, do you think that like you would have the appreciation for being alive? I sometimes wonder if, I mean, like my worst nightmare is my mom passing away. Like that's, like I will literally throw myself into the ocean the day that happens.
Yeah.
But then I also wonder if it's like, is the only way, because I'm such a... I don't want to say I'm negative, but I don't enjoy reality. But I wonder if the only way to enjoy and appreciate reality is to like hit rock bottom, is to experience like the finitude. Like I sometimes wonder if the reason I cannot appreciate life is because I'm yet to be confronted with death in a way that is as visceral as you've been confronted with it.
Oof, that is a profound thing to think about before having even experienced it, I would say. Because I believe there is some truth to that, maybe. I think the moments that absolutely destroy our sense of reality and destroy our world. So for me, that was when I was a Christian, realized, oh, wait, I don't actually know this. And then everything exploded in my world. I think that was part A, and then losing my mom was almost part B, where that happened again. I think those moments are, now this is where I show how not well read I am, because, and I think I was explaining that to you. But someone said it is, you'll probably know, it would feel as if to jump into the void and discover it is a featherbed. So it's that sense of this is the destruction of everything I am, and you feel like everything is completely over. And in that, you actually find unbelievable new things that are
freedom,
beautiful and free and empowering. And I guess it's like an inner power that it gives you, which I definitely didn't expect. Like when I was leaving Christianity and breaking free of the shackles of that whole framework, I thought I would just either die physically by my own hand, or I would live, but like, it's like, even if I stayed on the stage, I didn't think I would have any lines to say or any choreography to do. I would just stand there and wait for life to be over. And then it led to a different experience, which was, holy shit, I don't know who I am. But for the first time in my life, that's not faith. That is a reality that I can hold on to. I know for sure that I don't know shit. And that was so empowering. Yeah. And similarly with grief, it's like, I don't know, I guess it was maybe a survival mechanism, but when I looked up at the stars the night I was registering the pain of my mum passing, which 2 weeks prior I was having a really good conversation with her, and I did say, I think on the worst day of my life, which I guess is the day that you pass away, it would still be amazing to be alive. It was that sense of, holy shit, like that discovery of a truth as far as I've ever lived or understood something to be true. I couldn't shake it. Like everything I was feeling said endless suffering. But at the same time, that was served on a plate of, holy fuck, this is amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I even answered whatever we started with.
No, you did. No, you absolutely did.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, makes a good life? Like, what is a life well lived? Like, when you're 10 seconds away from dying, what will make you feel in that moment that you've lived well? Thank you for listening to the first half of this conversation. If you're interested in listening to the rest of this conversation, you will find it on Patreon. So please support my Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/bobosvoid, or you can just click on the link in the description box below. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'll be having so many more of these types of conversation with different friends, with different strangers, with all types of interesting people, and sometimes just conversing with myself. If you are interested in philosophy, politics, race, all the things, I'll be hosting all the conversations on my Patreon. So patreon.com/bobosvoid, or just click on the description box below and support me. Thank you.